Hi, welcome to the Andrew Buckle book review of Nostalgia About Comics, compiled by Phil Clarke and Mike Higgs. This is 68 pages, book came out in 1991 and it's from Pegasus Publishing. It's colour and black and white all the way through and it's just full of brilliant examples all the way through. So just let's go through it. Now this one is a nostalgic souvenir, I should say, the 40s and 50s glorious comic books. Now it's slightly before my time, but at the same time quite a few of these comics still turn up, and I remember many of these sort of things turning up in various places, and also friends that got copies of these sort of things as well, and also did much the same sort of collecting as I did, finding backstreet shops, of course many a backstreet shop, market stalls, etc. And also, of course, in like hairdressers and things, there's all these mags were everywhere. And great, they were always scruffy, ripped, torn, and whatever. But I loved them, I must admit, absolutely good. And there's just examples all the way through. Obviously, you can see there, Phantom, Falcon. Now, obviously, some are British ones, some are who knows where they're from, but some are obviously Australian, Canadian, American, etc. They were just all kinds, and I love there, even an example of some of the lovely sweets there, Aero and Kit Kat, etc. And this is assisted by, and there's all the details there. Wow, what a lovely book this is. You can see it's quite a sizable book. I mean, it's obviously it's very thin, but that doesn't matter. And I must admit, it's a pity in many ways. It would be nicer if it would be even bigger. Of course, there's loads of these sort of things, like Dennis Gifford brought out quite a few of these sort of books as well. But this is just a joy to read from start to finish. Dick Tracy, Daredevils, Tarzan, Bullet Man, all these sort of ones. Now, some of these, of course, were Fawcett Comics, Charlton Comics, whatever. I mean, whole range of Dell Comics. And of course, we've got our own British ones as well. Chips, Film Fun. I've got a few examples of those. Not as many as I would like. Dandies, of course, 1940s, 1950s as well. And it's a nice introduction with all the various details of all the various things. And occasionally, even in markets, recently I've seen some of these ones, and occasionally I think, oh, that would be great to have. And I've picked them up. Sometimes I haven't, and then regret it afterwards because they go mysteriously very quickly. The Junior Mirror. And you've got some of these ones often turn up. You quite often pick up these ones, told in pictures, and they don't last very long. If you don't pick it up for £1 or something, that's it, it's gone. Captain Marvel Junior Annual, and I saw one recently of that as well. Fawcett publication. And this one, Super Thrill. They had great titles as well. Super Thrill, Adventure Streamline Comics. And of course, that was probably Streamline Comics, the company that did it. But they also had all oddball companies as well, which makes it very hard to find, I suppose. Smuggler's Creek, Challenger Comics, Jumbo Comics, Forgers, Jolly Chuckles, Rocket Comics. Just brilliant. And it's got a few examples as well. Some stories, they're of their period anyway. That's the best way to describe it. Tornado to the Rescue. Well, we had a great character, Tornado. Super Thriller Comics. And it's got a little sort of a top here, sort of giving a bit of British American style comics. And it gives a bit of description of the thing. Because, well, it's just fascinating. All the various, obviously sometimes the front page was ripped off and they would send them in as ballast to the UK and things. So it's a great way of all picking up these ones. And they appear in the docks and things, or maybe obviously near American military bases. Great sources. For me, for picking up old ball comics, was often at the seaside. Don't know why, there was loads of stuff at the seaside, normally completely, utterly destroyed by the sun because they'd be stuck out in a spinner or something. And I just love those ones. But 5-star Western, some of these look like they've been stuck out in the sun a bit too long at times, very faded. But Tarzan comics, loads of Tarzan comics. Now I love Tarzan, but I'm not super fan of Tarzan, so I have to say Tarzan, the Grand Adventure Comics album, that was quite expensive, 3 shillings and 6 old pennies, volume 1. I imagine that was probably quite a few things. Also Buffalo Bill in it as well. Captain Marvel. Recently, I've seen loads of these old Captain Marvel ones. Normally L. Miller ones, but L. Miller. You can see the good old L. Miller there. Whiz Comics, Big Shot Comics, and you can see obviously some of these ones are definitely the British reprints of American comics, and they were reprinted basically with the cover Sparky Watts, Skyman, Barker. I do remember seeing these ones. Plastic Man, Straight Arrow, and I've had a few over the years. So Space Ace, Speed Smith. Some another one there. Some of the artwork, it was pretty rough, very rough actually, but still perfectly reasonable. Nothing wrong. You can read the story, and there's quite a few examples all the way through this. And also, I love the articles as well. You've got some articles there. Bad press. So horror comics. Is this the end? And you got obviously the cover there. you've got the young lad looking, and I don't know what one it is. Can't work it out. But wow, Captain Marvel club page. And you got Scooter, Circus Comics, Circus Parade, The Saint, Flash Comics, obviously not Flash Comics as in The Flash. These ones are Canadian ones, Flash again. So they had lots of variation. I imagine that lots of people use the same sort of titles as well. Flash was obviously a popular one. Don't know why. It's weird, isn't it? Flash. Twinkle Comics, Circus Comics. And I suppose every age would have different titles. New Active Comics. Oh, I love that. New Active Comics. Unusual Comics. That's an unusual title as well. I have to put that in. Joke Comics. Johnny Canuck Comics. And these are obviously Canadian, you can guess from that now. And apparently selection of Canadian coverless comics. All just fascinating, sort of the way that they were sent, obviously. And sometimes you get probably with coverless as well. Or they would have, obviously, a fake cover would be stuck on it. Normally very badly done. But still, you can always tell the different. The Panther. Those sort of things. This is just full of example after example of brilliant comics. Jet Fury, Dick Weston, popular comics, Rangers comics, Yarmak, never heard of it. Midi Malone is. However, I'm certain they're great. And pity, many of these do not turn up so often in sort of comic conventions. You go to comic conventions, it's all full of Marvel. You do get maybe occasional dealer that might have some. One or two of these things, they bring a box along, and they're always fascinating to look through. But it's mostly, it's of course American. We seem to have completely, in a way, totally forgotten about all these ones, and it's a pity really, because there's some really good stuff. A lot of annuals, picked up lots of annuals recently, 50s and 60s. They turn up at markets and things quite reasonably. Normally scrawled over, and people have coloured them because of course they were in black and white or something. And people would, I did the same. I wrecked most of my annuals. I was always colouring the things. Well, that's what you did. So Super Adventure Comics, and these sort of things do turn up as well. I love the Australian reprints. Sometimes black and white, sometimes in colour and things. I've got ones, mainly black and white though. I'm certain some are colour. Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. But look, I love that one. Captain America there. And look, what have they done there? Why did they do that? Didn't they, or did they just purposely decide to go for red and the different colour scheme? Very strange. Commie Smasher. The Man with No Face. Terry Lee, Secret Agents. Ace Pilot. Superman. Oh, so they've got here the annuals. These are sort of things, the annuals. You can find those reasonably easy. Normally, most of the time they got the spine is missing. They always seem to be in my copies anyway. But it's still, and normally like rips and tears, etc. So you can always see the thing. They're not really lasted very well. Jane on the Sawdust Trail. Garth. Now I'd love to get some Garth. I've got a few Garth ones, but not that one. Garth in The Last Goddess. Andy Capp. Now I regrettably didn't get that. I saw that in the shop recently. I didn't pick it up. Fluke. Quite expensive. Weird. I love Fluke. But I just one of those things. I just suddenly had a mental block at that point. I think, nope. And then I just didn't buy it, and that was gone. 2 minutes later, went back. Nope. Someone else has spotted that I looked at it, and that was it. However, I just love this sort of book. This book is just absolute joy. I would recommend you definitely pick this up, because it's just, if you're sort of into British comics and obviously Canadian, all the sort of thing, this is just revelation just going through this. And of course, probably a lot of these are very hard to find. You can find them, but books and things of like 30s and 40s and things are quite easy to pick up. But comics, for some weird reason, of course, lots of purges, lots of people got rid of all the things. They were just dumped, they were just rubbish. So books kept, comics just thrown away, destroyed, sadly, because it was obviously destroying the youth, etc., of the nation. And the Kiddie Fun album, Cute Fun, and all those sort of comics and stories for any old age. That's weird. What a weird title. For any old age. For any age, maybe, but any old age. Well, okay. Just Treasure Trove, etc. Roy Cuss. Wow, what a joy to read. Definitely recommend this one. Nostalgia about comics. A pleasure to read from start to finish. And it's a revelation. Lots of things I must admit I didn't realise. I'd love to have virtually all of these, but you just can't get them all. So, Nostalgia about comics, totally recommended.